This committee and we'll be conducting today's hearings. We are here today for the purpose of conducting 3 bill hearings. If you wish to testify in person on any of the matters before us, we ask that you fill out one of the white sheets of paper. The white sheets are located on either side of the room. If you're here and you do not wish to testify, but you do wish to state your support or opposition for any of the matters before us, we ask that you fill in one of the sign-in sheets. If you do testify, we ask you to begin your testimony by stating and spelling your name for the record, which is very important for our transcriber's office. The order of proceedings is that the introducers will be given an opportunity to open. Then we will hear from the proponents, opponents, and neutral testimony. We ask that you listen very carefully to try not to be repetitive. We do use the light system in the General Affairs Committee. Each testifier is afforded 3 minutes to testify. When the yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute remaining, and we ask that you begin concluding your remarks. When the red light comes on, your time has expired, and we will open up the committee to any questions they may have of you. At this time, I'd like to encourage everyone to turn off or silence any cell phones or electronic devices, anything that makes noise. The General Affairs Committee is a committee that is equipped for electronics, so you may see members referencing their iPads, iPhones, or other electronic devices. I can assure you they're just researching the matters before us. If you have a prepared statement, an exhibit, or anything you would like distributed to the committee members, we ask that you provide 12 copies to our committee clerk. If you don't have 12 copies, don't worry. Provide what you have to the committee clerk. With that, we'll proceed to the introduction of members. Let's begin with Senator Arch on the far right.
I'm John Arch, District 14, Papillion, La Vista, and Sarpy County.
Tom Brewer, District 43, 11 counties of western Nebraska.
And to my immediate right is Lori Holman, legal counsel, and to the far left is Alexander DeGarmo, committee clerk. And for our pages today, we have, go ahead and stand, guys. We have Joseph Schaefer. He attends UNL. He's a history major. And we have Peyton Larson, also attending UNL, who's a political science and history major. Thank you, guys. And with that, we will begin the hearing on our first bill, which is LB 866. Welcome, Senator Brandt. Yeah, we have the, okay. And we do have Senator Kavanaugh. Would you like to introduce yourself, Senator?
John Kavanaugh, District 9, Midtown Omaha. Thank you, Chairman.
You bet. Thank you. Go ahead, Senator.
Good afternoon, Chairman Breezy and members of the General Affairs Committee. My name is Tom Brandt, T-O-M-B-R-A-N-D-T. I represent District 32, Fillmore, Thayer, Jefferson, Saline, and southwestern Lancaster counties. Today, I'm introducing Legislative Bill 866. LB 866 will raise the late fee for failing to properly file requests for electrical inspection from $50 to $250. The intent of the bill is to incentivize electrical contractors and others to properly file these requests so the state electrical division is aware of electrical projects occurring throughout the state and can properly inspect these projects, ensuring the safety of all involved. It is important to note that the bill does not increase any cost to do business for these contractors who are properly following the permitting processes of the state electrical division. Over the past few years, the number of late inspection requests has increased, with an overwhelming majority of them coming from out-of-state contractors who take jobs from our local electricians and seem to have no concern for following the electrical permitting process set out by the State Electrical Board, who brought me this bill. Behind me will be testimony from Craig Thielen, Executive Director of the State Electrical Division, who can discuss the electrical inspection process and the need for discouraging people from failing to properly file requests for inspection. Other testimony and support will be from electricians and those in the field who can give their perspective of the importance of the bill. I ask the committee to help Nebraska by reining in out-of-state contractors and advance LB 866 to general file. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Brandt. Any questions of the senator? Seeing none, thank you. First proponent testifier, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Craig Thielen, CraigThelen. I'm the Director for the State of Nebraska Electrical Division. The State Electrical Board would like to thank Senator Brandt for introducing this bill and request that LB 866 be moved forward. The State Electrical Board consists of electricians, engineers, electrical inspectors, and representatives from local utility companies. We are responsible for licensing electricians in the state of Nebraska. We hold approximately 13,000 licenses for contractors, journeymen, residential wiremen, and fire alarms. We are also responsible for all permits that are filed in the state, and we average just under 10,000 per year. We have 16 state electrical inspectors that oversee these permits. LB 866 will help address the increasing number of electrical projects occurring without proper permitting in place before the work begins. The permitting process starts when a contractor or electrician licensed in Nebraska files a permit with our office, either in person or online, for work they will be performing. When the permit is filed, it is assigned to one of the state inspectors who will then be notified by the contractor when they are ready for inspections on the project. These are underground, rough-in, and final inspections that are performed on each of these projects to ensure that the work is completed to the National Electrical Code, which is currently NFPA 70, the NEC 2017 edition. Most of the non-permitted work is coming from out-of-state contractors. The Nebraska State Electrical Division requests to increase the fees for late filing for permits from $50 to $250. Historically, a contractor from out-of-state will assume work in Nebraska and fail to follow the proper permitting requirements. A good example recently is a contractor doing work on cell towers was recently doing some work, and there was no permits on file. Upon this discovery from a local electrical contractor, the out-of-state contractor ended up filing over 75 permits that would have normally gone unpermitted if they were not caught in the act of doing the work. Ideally, we would receive no money from this increase of the late fees. We prefer all the contractors working in Nebraska follow the permitting rules by filing their permits ahead of any work being performed. In the past, we have seen around 50 late fees issued per year out of these permits. This is not a lot, but much of this work does go unnoticed, and so by raising the punitive late fee, hopefully this will encourage out-of-state contractors to follow the state permitting process. This requested late fee aligns with 14 other states that are part of a reciprocal agreement that we belong to, which is the National Electrical Reciprocal Alliance. I have provided documentation on what several other reciprocal states are charging in this matter. Your support of LB 866 to increase this fee for late filed permits is appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Arch.
Thank you for coming. What is considered late?
Late fees, so if they've actually started the work and are doing, in the case of these towers, they actually had the work completed and were already gone from the job site when a local contractor realized that work had been done on these cell tower stations or locations. And so I know sometimes there's a permit that may not get filed right away. That's not what we're after. We're after the contractors that are coming in from out of state that are doing work without the proper permitting. And this company ended up being from Texas in this case, and they're actually one of our reciprocal states.
I'm reading the line, at or before commencement of any installation required to be inspected by the board. Is this an inspection of the plans or is this actual site inspection?
Site inspections.
So how fast can you turn around when somebody says, I need to start this tomorrow? Okay, that's the day before, so I guess they're not late.
They can do online permits, so they can have them done in less than 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Arch. Senator Lowell.
Thank you. And thanks for coming in today.
Sure.
Why are there so many out-of-state electrical contractors coming in? Don't we have enough contractors in our state? I assume everybody's shorthanded across the country. So why do we have so many coming in?
So so in this case, I was a cell tower example. Another area is like the Walmarts. These are corporately owned out of state. And so they bring their team from their corporate office to do this kind of work. That's happened on several occasions as well. Orchlands is another good example. And so these companies that have corporates outside of Nebraska, that's where we're seeing a lot of this happening.
Okay. Do we have enough electrical contractors in our state to handle?
We do. I think with our reciprocal agreement, we have a pool of other out-of-state electricians that can actually come in and work and follow the requirements as well. We could always use more electricians, and we are avidly working to try to promote the electrical trade to get more electricians. And so there is plenty of work to keep the electricians we have busy, and out-of-state contractors, that's unfortunately they come with some of these big corporate companies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lowell. Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here, Ms. Thielen. On that example you used, there's 75 things. Would they be subjected to that late fee for each one of those 75, or is it that's a per project?
So that would, in this case, it would be a one-time fee for that, for them not filing permits. The intent is not to do it for every project. It's just more to stop them from doing it. The $50 fee, they kind of laugh it off a little bit because it's pretty minimal. If you see some of the information, some of the states are charging 3 times what the permit is. And the only reason we went with the $250 is because we were on a dollar amount. We have a $50 amount. South Dakota does a $250, very similar to what I'm proposing.
What would 3 times the permit be?
It could vary. So sometimes a permit can be $4,000. So I thought that was a little excessive. I think it could, and if you notice, some of those are 2.5 times, and then after 90 days, the cost goes up each time. And so I think ours is reasonable, and I think we can deter them from doing it by raising those fees.
And you mentioned that that example only got filed because somebody noticed it. Are there projects out there that just are not going filed at all then?
There's a lot of projects happening without permits being filed that don't get caught, or that we don't catch them.
And this isn't going to solve that problem.
It's not going to solve that problem, but the hope is we can stop these contractors that are doing it by raising those fees to stop them. If that cost goes up, it's $50. They can do 5 projects, and so this one hopefully will raise that fee enough to stop that from happening. And I think, I don't think we're ever going to stop it. I think you're trying to keep them honest, and I think this helps to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Any other questions? And so if you have a project that doesn't get inspected and then, or it comes to your attention, or they ask for an inspection too late, what happens then?
They're issued a late fee for $50 currently, and they file their permit and they pay the $50 late fee. And then, if the work is all done, it could be they have to open the walls back up to re-expose it so we can thoroughly inspect it like it should have done when it's properly permitted.
And so you can conduct your investigation or your inspection after the fact if you have to.
Absolutely.
And you can do it efficiently and accurately
And it's the overrun for the contractor too. If we don't do the rough-in inspection and do the inspections like they're supposed to be done.
okay. And so really, they are the ones at risk here on a late inspection.
Yes.
Okay. Because they may have to go back and open things up and redo some things.
Yeah, so it's not only the fee, but the other punitive cost for having to, if the walls are all built, they may have to open them back up to re-expose that, to do a rough-in inspection of those walls that were not inspected properly.
If I understood you correctly in answering Senator Kavanaugh's question, this doesn't solve the issue of those that simply don't get reported, don't get inspected.
Yeah, there's a percentage of them that go unnoticed. And I think one of the things we're trying to do is build a stronger relationship with the contractors. And that's how this was brought to our attention on the towers, as a local contractor brought to our attention because it was taking work away from them. And so.
Did you provide an estimate as to what this change could mean in terms of dollars annually? I don't recall.
Well, yeah, so right now there's about 50 of these permits, late fees that were issued last year. And so I hope the number goes to zero. I hope I don't see any revenue from it. I hope this stops them from working outside of the state requirements. And the interesting thing is a lot of these contractors that are doing it, like the cell tower company, they have an electrician that's actually licensed in Nebraska through reciprocal. So he could have done the work.
Okay, thanks for your testimony.
Yep.
Anyone else? Thanks. Next proponent testifier. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. My name is John Nebel, Jonnebel. I am a business representative for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBW Local 22 in Omaha, representing 2,023 members and 550 non-members in Nebraska and Western Iowa. I am also a licensed journeyman electrician in Nebraska and Iowa. LB 866 is a step in the right direction for us. It will not raise costs for anyone doing good business in Nebraska. To increase the delinquent fee to $250 shows Nebraska is ready to make it more difficult to do bad business in our state. As Mr. Thielen said and Mr. Brent said, it will hold those out-of-state contractors accountable for bad business practices. I just wanted to highlight that there are a few hidden reasons why a contractor would also file a late inspection. You could do it so you could stay out of the working ratios. Right now, we have 3 apprentices to 1 journeyman as a working ratio on the job site. Anytime there's electrical work done, the journeyman will be there. So in essence, if you were to file a late permit, you wouldn't be able, you would already have your crew gone, especially if you were from out of state. And so there would be no opportunity to know if you were working within the proper ratios, even if you did have a licensed person at that point. The other one would be to install work out of compliance of current code standards. I know that there's times where I've been on a job site and there was work completed that wasn't necessarily permitted work, but if you let it go long enough, you could almost have the stance, if you were to get caught, to say, oh, this is nothing that we have done, that it was there before, you could inspect it, but it was nothing that we have done to install on the permit. So kind of a way to skirt the system if you didn't have a permit while you were doing the work. And of course, it would cut costs for those contractors looking to work outside of those ratios and maybe not do everything inside the code compliance. I think it would go a long ways to correcting the situation. Obviously, you don't want to make it an OSHA fine, like when you get hit with an OSHA fine, you could be out of compliance with the OSHA safety standards. It could be $10,000 would be the fine. That would immediately make a contractor rethink the way they were doing their business. This, I think, gets them on the right track and makes them a good partner with the state if perhaps they weren't understanding all the rules and working in the state and coming in and doing work for their subs or their corporations that they were doing work for all across the country. I respectfully ask for you to support LB 866. As I stated before, there'll be no cost increase for any contractor doing good business in Nebraska. Thank you for your time, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Groney.
I might have missed this, but another part of the law, it says they're gonna get rid of the 50 cents. But then along with any inspection fees required for such installation, what are those fees now? Are there any?
I would defer to Director Thielen on that. I'm not too certain on what extra fees are along with the permit.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Senator Groney. Anyone else? We're raising this $200. Is that enough to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish here?
It makes it harder to do bad business. I would say go higher, but everybody's got their own story on why they didn't file a permit. And I would expect that the board kind of would call people that they questioned to be bad business partners in front of them and start correcting it. But it would go, I think it would go a long ways in showing out-of-state contractors that Nebraska is no longer allowing this type of behavior, they're starting to get on the right track.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Seeing no other questions, thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next proponent testifier. Seeing none. Any opponent testifiers? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to testify in a neutral capacity? Seeing none. Senator Brandt, would you like to close?
Just a couple of things. There is no fiscal note. The point is not to raise revenue. Like the director said, the point is hopefully not to have any more fines and have no revenue. The 50 cents, Senator Brony, the director, this is a cleanup, and that was actually a typo back in the day. And so because we opened the bill back up, they struck that. So, okay. Any questions?
Yes, any questions for Senator? Seeing none. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And I don't believe we have any letters for the record. That'd be correct? Seeing nothing there. So that closes the hearing on that bill. We'll open up on LB 840. Welcome to your committee, Senator.
I was prepared just in case. Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Good afternoon, fellow senators of the General Affairs Committee. I'm Senator Tom Brewer. For the record, that is TOM-BREWER. I represent 11 counties of the 43rd Legislative District of Western and Central Nebraska. I'm here to introduce LB 840. I'm introducing this bill on behalf of the Nebraska Press Association. They brought this idea to me and will be testifying after my opening. LB 840 makes two important changes to modernizing Nebraska public notice statutes. Public notice serves as a conduit of information from the government and courts to the public. In Nebraska, like all other states, public notices are required to be published in newspapers of general circulation serving the area in which the entirety placing this, the entity placing this notice is located. The printed public notice is part of the legal process, and the qualifications for a newspaper to be legal and allowed to publish public notices are set in state statutes. Also set in statutes are the rates newspapers can charge for the public notices. The rate was last increased 26 years ago in 1996. LB 840 provides for an increase in the baseline rate from 45 cents to 50 cents over a 2-year period. I'm aware that the Press Association discussed this bill with a variety of groups representing political subdivisions who frequently publish legal notices, and the 2-year phase came directly from feedback received from those discussions. LB 840 also establishes that all public notices after first appearing in print are to be placed on a statewide public notice website that is a repository for such notices. This will help modernize public notices by ensuring greater access to the public notices and creating a digital archive of all notices. A statewide public notice website is already managed and maintained by the Nebraska Press Association. The Nebraska Press Association requires that these members post their notices to the public notice website, and that there are currently 100,000 public notices on the website. There is no cost to the government or to the court for placing notices on the website. I do have an amendment which should have been handed around that clarifies that this notice going on the statewide website is not part of the official legal notice publication process, which will remain publishing in the notice of the local newspaper. Let's see, I'll be followed by folks from the Nebraska Press Association, subject to your questions. And the only other thing I want to throw in is because we're on a short timeline with Friday being actually the last day before we would have to have stuff on speaker priority or consent calendar, I would ask for an exec this week if we can on this. With that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. First proponent testifier. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Breezy and members of the General Affairs Committee. My name is Mark Rhodes. It's MarkRhoades. I'm president of Enterprise Media Group, headquartered in Blair, Nebraska. I'm a fifth-generation newspaper publisher and owner of 10 community newspapers, 7 of them here in Nebraska. I'm here today to encourage your support for LB 840. LB 840 has 2 key points that are important to the newspaper industry and also to the taxpayers of Nebraska. First point for newspapers is that it allows a 3-cent per line price increase starting in October of 2022, and then an additional 2 cents per line beginning in October of 2023. There's not been an increase in the public notice rate since September of 1996. In the case of our family newspaper, it has literally been 3 generations since these rates have been adjusted. While I'm 5th generation, my son has chosen to continue in the family business and will be the 6th consecutive generation to be in the newspaper publishing business. The fact that he's from a younger generation and has chosen to stay in the business shows that he believes that even though the printed version of newspapers have seen some declines, our overall reach and engagement with our readers is larger than it ever has been. Our newspapers have seen only about a 2% decrease in circulation per year the last several years, but our website traffic continues to increase, and we consistently have more than 100,000 unique views each month to our website and a community of under 10,000 people. Newspapers have continued to publish public notices at the same rate the past 25 years, while costs for postage, newsprint, salaries, utilities, and basically everything we use in the industry have increased. In some cases, nearly 50%. In addition, the United States Post Office has another 10% postage increase scheduled to go into effect in March of 2023. It's doubtful you could find any business that hasn't adjusted their prices since 1996 who would still be in business. In addition to publishing public notices on our newspapers, publishers also serve to create the official documentation of all notices through affidavits and printed proof of publications. This is an essential part of the public notice process, as newspapers serve as a watchdog of sorts to make sure all notices are published on time and as required, and this service is included in the basic price of the notice. There have been calls for years to modernize public notices, and LB 840 does just that by mandating that all public notices from government entities in Nebraska be placed on one centralized website. This is good for taxpayers and also good public policy. In order to streamline this service, the Nebraska Press Association has created a statewide website that will house these public notices in one place. The association will also place these notices on the website, so there's no additional work for any of the government entities. All notices will be available on the site within 48 hours and accessible to anyone from anywhere in Nebraska, and in reality, anywhere in the world. Again, this is all being done at no additional cost to any government body. I would like to thank Senator Brewer for introducing this bill, and Senator Breezy and the General Affairs Committee for giving me the opportunity to speak today in support of this bill. And I ask for your vote of approval on LB 840.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Senator Lowell.
Thanks. I'm just curious, how's the bottom line of the newspapers doing since you're moving basically from paper to digital, it sounds like?
Well, the print version is still very solid. We're seeing a lot of people take the e-edition of the newspaper, which looks just like the printed version, but it's online, and then the website's on top of that. The bottom lines are not what they used to be in the glory days, I'll admit that, but most newspapers are still hanging in there pretty well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lowell. Any other questions? Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy, and thank you for being here, Mr. Rhodes. So as to the requirement of the being published on the central location, Senator Brewer circulated an amendment that basically said that failure to post it there would not invalidate the publication.
Right.
And the Associated Press or the Press
Press
Association
Association, yes.
requires that you as a member publish to it. So I guess are we just adding extra language in the statute to say that you should publish it here and there's no requirement or no ramification?
But I think
if you don't?
before, and Dennis, our Nebraska Press Executive Director, might be able to answer that a little bit better, but before it was just strictly in print. There was no requirement from the Press Association to mandate that those notices go on the site. It's more of a Press Association mandate that's doing that. So each newspaper is responsible to get them to the Press Association so they can be posted on the website.
I guess my question from this bill's perspective is, it's saying you have to do that, what you just said the Press Association says, but there's no ramification, there's no penalty if you don't do it.
I would pass that question on to Mr.
And he's going to testify?
Yes. He's
Okay,
gonna be on
thank you.
later.
Thanks, Sarah Kavanaugh. Anyone else? Seeing no other questions, thank you for your
Okay, thank you.
testimony here today. Next proponent, testifier.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Senator Breezy and members of the General Affairs Committee. My name is Peggy Year, Peggyear, and I, along with my husband, Rob Dump, are owners and publishers of 5 small community newspapers in Northeast Nebraska. We purchased our first paper, the Cedar County News, in 1992, and like farming, we quickly learned the economy of scale and found with the increasing costs of printing and distribution, we would need to print our own paper to be able to stay somewhat ahead of the increasing costs of operation. And as such, in 96, we purchased 3 other small weeklies, which included a small printing press. In 2000 and 2006, with a declining rural population and economy, we again had to adapt, enabling us to add on and save literally 2 more small weeklies that could no longer survive under a one-person ownership. That's how quickly things changed in our rural communities, and that change is not slowing down. To stay in business and maintain newspapers in these small communities, we reduced staff and centralized administrative and production services. However, and very importantly, we continue to maintain an office and staff person in each community our newspapers serve. Because of the large rural area we cover, delivery of our product is highly dependent upon the U.S. Postal Service. Since 1995, the last time rates for public notices increased, our postage rates have increased 42%. All of our operating costs, especially postage, labor, and printing, have increased significantly in that time. I'm sharing this as the basis for asking for your support of LB 840, which would provide the first increase in 25 years for public notice line rates. Additionally, times have changed, but the importance of public notices being published by an independent third party has not. LB 840 contains a second provision addressing that very concern. Through the leadership of the Nebraska Press Association, Nebraska newspapers have stepped up to modernize public notice access by increasing their accessibility via a statewide public notice website. These efforts were started 10 years ago, and in June 2021, the website was redesigned and relaunched with much better features. Today, there are 100,000 notices on the website, which has free access to the public at no cost to government. Also, since June, the Board of Directors of NPA amended its bylaws to require all members to upload their public notices to this website as a requirement of membership to NPA. We, as community newspaper publishers and our association, believe in rural Nebraska communities, and we have a passion for our roles as community cheerleaders and historians, and as the watchdog of elected officials and government entities. That's why we have taken on the job of modernizing public notices, utilizing an independent statewide public notice website as a public service by all Nebraska newspapers for all Nebraskans. Thank you for your time and support of LB 840.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Gruen.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Learned about the website just now. How many hits do they have on it? You know,
I'm afraid I'd have to defer to Dennis Dennis DeRossett, our executive director, who keeps track
how
of that.
popular it is or how well known it is to the public that exists. Ask him. Thank you.
Yep.
He knows the question now.
She
Thank
can
you,
go
Senator
one.
Groney. Sarah Lowe.
Thank you. How do these line rates compare to advertising or a story that may be paid for?
Well, I can only use our newspaper as an example. Our inch rate, our column inch rate is $6.51 for a column width by 1 inch. One line of copy for a legal notice for one time would begin at, I think, 0.0045 per line. Your school board and your county commissioners have a decreased rate. For example, the county commissioner's rate is 3/4 of that rate itself. And the school board, I'm afraid I don't remember what their rate is, but it's less than that. And in our county, we have 3 other legal newspapers. And so that 3/4 rate is split 3 ways so that each person or each newspaper is actually getting 1/3 of 0.004, whatever that rate might be. I can't remember it exactly, but that gives you a sufficient idea, I think. A regular legal notice, like an estate notice that runs 3 times, would maybe cost $18.
Per column inch?
No, $18 total. For a 3-week run,
Okay.
it would cost you $18 for an estate notice.
How about like obituary?
Our obituaries are really cheap, and I hate to say that in front of all the other people here because theirs are probably much better. We're $35 for an obituary, which includes a photo. So,
All right.
and any size.
So you still maintain the different newspapers, or did you combine them into one?
No, each one is an individual newspaper.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Any other questions? Senator Brent.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Ms. Year, for your
Mhm.
testimony. You raised something that piqued my interest. Where you have multiple newspapers in the same county, they have to divide that rate?
Well, in our county, each county is allowed to set it up for their stuff, for however they would like to. For example, in Knox County, because we own a newspaper in Knox County, there are 6 legal newspapers, or there were, when their method was first designed. And so every 2 years, 2 different newspapers were allowed to run the county commissioner, the superintendent's minutes. And so it would be split between, for example, the Wausau Gazette and the Niobrara newspaper for 1 year. And then the next year it would be rotated to 2 other newspapers. And so you're splitting that money in half every 3 years.
Okay, all right.
Does that make
Thank you.
sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Brent. Anyone else? Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next proponent testifier. Welcome.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Senator Breezy and members of the General Affairs Committee. I want to thank Senator Brewer for introducing this. My name is Kevin Zadina, Kevinzadina. Unlike my colleagues that have just testified about owning newspapers, my wife and I are newspaper owners of 45 days at this time. However, I've been a publisher for 18 years and I've worked in the business for 39. Currently own the Seward County Independent, Crete News, Milford Times, Friend Sentinel, and the Wheeler Republican, all in Seward and Saline counties. All of the newspapers have been family owned since the time they were published, though. So with that, I mean, I believe that newspapers will be here in the future, whether that's hard copy or different forms that we adapt to. One of the things we include the public with all the public notices. All government notices are published in a trusted source in our newspapers. for the general public. The notices are important and can be found on our pages and online on our websites. Our playing field has changed and it's going to continue to change. We'll continue to change our delivery with our content, which includes public notices, to the general public, with all of our newspapers and our digital platforms. I currently have 14 employees, and I have 6 of those that are under 35, and some younger college people that are excited about what platforms we can do with newspapers. So the cost of creating newspaper pages has steadily increased over the past 25 years since the rates were last changed. I give our readers something that no one else does, and that's local news, which attracts them to our newspapers and our websites. The increased readership over all the platforms give more exposure and attention to public notices. As an example of delivery method in Seward County, we actually deliver each morning a daily update, but sometimes we include a public notice with agenda items that are important to our readers. And that's at no additional cost to any entity of the government at that time. We're just informing our readers. So LB 840 would enable audiences and attention to public notices throughout the state with the public website. Not having by having one website makes it easier for taxpayers to find information, further ensures government transparency. The bill provides a 2-step rate increase in public notices, line rates, which would be helpful in newspapers, and we appreciate. With that, I would like to thank the General Affairs Committee for my time here and appreciate your support of LB 840. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Senator Lowell.
Since we're doing both paper and websites now, can this be published in the website legally, or does it have to be in paper form?
From right now, the website would not be the same as the affidavits we fill out for public notices that are legal in the newspapers.
I just didn't know if the Times, if it went digital, you could have the notices published there, but it must be in paper form
At this time, yeah.
at this time. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Anyone else? You suggested earlier, you said earlier that your costs have went up considerably in the last 27 years, but also your revenues went up, I assume. How about your margins? Any?
They've obviously gone up. Our revenues have gone up, but we've got again, I'll go back to being a publisher, is that, I've had to trim employees over the course of time. That's the biggest thing, but we still want to be able to deliver on, our content. So yes, everything's increased, but it's also on the expense side too. Sure.
Okay. You would characterize these rate increases as extremely important to the viability of small town newspapers?
I don't think they're extremely important. I said that that'd be appreciated. If you look at the revenues that we gain off of public notices, it's not, by any means, the majority of what our newspapers are producing for revenues.
Okay, thank you. Senator Groen?
Thank you. I understand it's being paid by tax dollars, but it's from 48 cents from 45 cents to 48 cents is the increase, right? That's 6 2/3%. Inflation this year is 7%. So if we would, you guys are very generous or become very, very productive if you only need a 3-cent increase. That was 25 years when this year it's 7% on loans. Anyway, seems very modest increase to me. Thank you. Would you agree? That's my question. Thank you, Senator Brony. Anyone else?
Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony here today. Next proponent. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senators, Senator Breezy, and members of the committee. My name is Dennis DeRosset. That's Dennis DeRossett. I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Press Association. We represent all daily and weekly newspapers in Nebraska. Thank you for this opportunity to speak here today in support of LB 840. And I also want to thank Senator Brewer for sponsoring this bill and for his opening remarks. Some of my comments may be duplicative because for time purposes, I'll try to cover it all. But also I would like to answer some of the questions that have come up. The people that have gone before me represent the lifeblood of their communities. The newspapers are the trusted source for news in their communities, and basically they chronicle everyday happenings, the life of their citizens, and they serve as the common thread in that community. The local newspaper is a trusted news source, and that's where public notices have long been published and read. And the newspaper not only disseminates the information, but in doing so, it fosters civic engagement and local democracy. Public notices are not a large revenue stream for newspapers, but it certainly is a significant one. But for the units of government placing the notice, the amount it spends represents a very good return on its investment. That is, keeping taxpayers informed in an efficient, proven, and cost-effective manner. So yes, 25 years without an increase it's a long time, and I believe the justification has been made. And last fall, we did reach out to several large associations representing government groups and talked about our need. And the result of those discussions was that there would be an 11.1% increase that goes from 45 cents to 50 cents, but over 2 years. So go 45 to 48, and then the second year would go 48 to 50 cents a line. And the bill contains that language. The reason for the website, which we relaunched last June, is really all about more readers, accessibility, and transparency. We launched it in June. We've done a soft launch intentionally because there's a process of taking the notices from the pages and getting them uploaded to the website. We've just started promoting the website. I hope you've seen it. It's www.nepublicnotices.com. But it also serves as a permanent archives for notices. The accessibility is greater, functionality is greater, searchability is there by any newspaper, any date, any county. However you want to search, it's there. We believe so strongly in having one that we did require our members to upload those notices. I see the red light, so.
Somebody will probably ask you a question, though, I'm guessing.
Sure.
Questions? Or Low?
I didn't get what you were going to say. Could you please finish?
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Appreciate that. So we did launch the website and for a greater accessibility of the notices. And so in modernizing these notices, the idea was that the print news notice, it actually is the legal process. We are part of a legal process. We provide the independent third-party certification of that notice. The website just gives us a greater transparency, greater readership, greater awareness. And it also gives, I think, for the taxpayers, more people seeing notices. In instances like bids, you might have for any project where it could provide more bidders, more opportunity for lower prices for those bids, which is a benefit to taxpayers. But there is no permanent archive except individual newspapers right now. And rather than have hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of notices spread across hundreds of government websites, we think it's better that they be in one website, all notices be there, and every notice be required to be on the site. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So it's easy to access.
It is easy to access.
I mean, with 100,000, you would think it'd be complicated.
We did a soft launch intentionally because of the technology involved, and there's different, levels of technology being used by our newspapers. Some are one-person operations, some are, major operations. So to get all the notices uploaded to the site, to have the functionality and everything in place, I'd say we've done a lot in the last 6 months. It's working well. We're already started our hard launch in the last couple of weeks with advertising in all the newspapers, social media, and getting the word out. We want the URL to be known by everyone. So anyone who wants to access a public notice outside of the newspaper, there's one source to do that.
Thank you.
So all of these notices will be archived,
It's a permanent archive on the site, yes.
and I just go in and say, I want to see when the next meeting is of the notices of the local community. I type in the community and it'll bring up the notice.
Yes, I wish I could do a demo for you right now, which we did give one to Senator Brewer, but notices that are in the future, unless notice of the meeting has been given, obviously it's not on the site, but anything in the past that goes in this site, it only goes back to June, that's when it started. But you put the date range in and you can access any notice.
So a new notice won't be on there. The meeting hasn't been held yet.
The notices are now established, put on the site within 24 to 48 hours. And we hope by the time that we get to this summer that it's in the paper, it'll be on the website within 24 hours.
So how does this help you with readership? If there's just some guy that goes to every single meeting, and that's the only reason he buys the papers, and to find a notice.
Well, those are probably few and far between as far as individuals, but all along newspapers have been about open government, transparency, and this is a way that we feel augments what we do through print and establishes. We know there's an audience out there for the digital. There's always been talk about modernizing notices, but that modernizing has only been putting them on government websites. And again, so you have 100,000 notices over 100 websites, nobody knows where to go. So we will publicize one website, all the notices will be there. And what we require our members to upload, the reason we want the statutory language is that in the future, if no newspaper could opt out, otherwise you have an incomplete public notice website. And if you had a group, whether it be a single newspaper or a group of newspapers that changed ownership and decided, we don't necessarily want to participate in that, they wouldn't have a choice under this. Nebraska still has a complete, accurate, 100% public notice website.
Thank you, Senator Groney. Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for being here, Mr. DeRosa.
Yes.
So, to your point, there's an amendment that basically would say that failure to post on that website does not invalidate the publication. So what is the repercussion under the scenario you're talking about if a paper decides to opt out of your system?
Well, then they would not be able to, with this, be able to use public notices, because that would be a requirement. But the idea is that with the print being the valid basis for the notice, if there was a technical error and it wasn't uploaded unintentionally, that wouldn't invalidate the notice. That's the intent of the amendment that we discussed.
So the intent is that it's still not a valid notice if they don't publish it to the website.
It would be a legal notice if it's in print and they fulfill that. The newspaper has to go the second step, obligated to upload it. If it's a technical issue and they do not, then it doesn't invalidate the notice, because in saying a notice isn't legal, a meeting couldn't be held, or, election would be stopped, different things could happen. So, but as far as, mandating and saying, you have to publish notices, we think it should be a part of a requirement to be able to publish notices. You need to upload to this website.
I guess I'm having trouble making the distinction between purposefully not uploading it and choosing not to upload it. It seems to have the same effect.
I guess, could you ask that again, please?
Well, so I'm trying to understand, you're saying this amendment would make exception, say it's still a legal notice if someone has a technical problem with uploading it. Is that right?
Yes, and I don't have the particular wording in front of me, but I guess it's, unintentional is the key there. As far as being able to publish a notice.
Okay. I don't see I guess I don't see a reference to intention in.
Okay,
in the
I'd
amendment.
have to read, I'm not sure I have that amendment in front of me. I'm sorry.
So, but what your desire would be to still have it be a requirement of a legal notice that they at least attempt to publish to that website.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Lowe?
Oh, thank you. The software that you use to publish the notices, easy to use on the user end?
Very easy from the functionality. The platform we're on is actually used as a public notice platform in about 16 other states. There are various platforms. So it's been developed over the last 10 years. There's also new features that will be launched even yet this year that will further aid in as far as this whole process. But functionality of this is very easy. You go on and it's just, I don't know how to describe it, except I wish I could give you a demo right now. But you can by date, by newspaper, by county, by type of notice. And there's just a lot of features that, if you track foreclosures, you can, put in your keywords, your specs, and those automatically, if you sign up for a smart search, which is a feature, then you're notified that notices containing your keywords are actually now on the site. New ones have been uploaded.
Right.
So
I was just contemplating this because I believe Senator Brewer had a bill in front of executive board that so we could record these hearings and the floor debate, and so it'd be accessible to the public so they could actually see these. And a comment was made that it would be too tough to have multiple searches and to actually come up with these, along with storage of those files. But if we made it reasonable storage time and like a week or something, that wouldn't be too far out. And so it sounds like this is a fairly easy process and it works pretty well.
it's an easy process, and the goal is that every newspaper would have a link to the site on their homepage, and we would invite units of government to also have the link so that, again, anyone goes to any website, government website, newspaper website, they want public notice, they click on the link and they have access.
Thank you.
Senator Lowe, Senator Brand?
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Mr. DeRosette, for your
Yes.
testimony today. Following up on Senator Kavanaugh's rationale, do we have any newspapers that belong to your association that are 100% digital online only?
No,
What would happen if the world goes that way and, the cost of newsprint goes up so much that you can't do that? Would this law affect those if you had online public notices?
we know we're in a transition period, and we know that some of our members will be in the future, because they've announced it, going more digital editions than they have print editions. So we're going to have to look to evolve notices between print and digital and come up with a solution that's just, not there yet, but it's one that is out ahead of us, and the discussion has to be held. It's being held in many states, a lot of different variations to it, but there's no single answer yet.
And then, did I understand you correctly that in the print edition, across the top, they would say that like in the Fairbury Journal, for example, is one of my districts.
Yes.
You can access all this information by going to this website.
Yes, we give our newspapers promo material, we call them house ads, to run that explain the purpose and value of public notices and where to go also to find public notices, the URL.
And then real quick, the last question, is there a common architecture so that if one newspaper calls it a sheriff's sale, the next one calls it a foreclosure, the next one might call it something else? Or you have to specifically type in sheriff's sale?
The keywords, you can type it in so that keywords include any of the words you put in, specific words or specific phrases.
All right.
So if you put in 10 different words searching for something with foreclosure, sheriff's or bids, invitation to bid, request for bids, you put those words in and it'll pull those up.
All right. Thank you.
Senator Brandt, Senator Brony. Thank you, Chairman. This website has absolutely nothing to do with the public entity, right? The public entity's requirement is to put it into a local newspaper.
Yes, the government or any unit of government or court is required to put notices in print, yes.
In a local
Local
paper, nearest
newspaper,
one in their county.
yes, yes.
So this has nothing to do with that. If it does not go on the website, that has nothing to do with the public notice. It's been done by the entity.
Yes, the entity has placed the notice in the newspaper as it would be required.
So
And
if a
then-
newspaper forgot to publish it in the paper, but sent it to the website, that website does not serve as proof by the entity that they had a public notice. It has to be in the newspaper, right?
Right, and the way the process works, no notice can appear on the website until it's first published in the newspaper. And once it's published in the newspaper, it can't be changed on the public notice
So
website.
this website has no added burden to any public entity or any elected officials at the local level.
No,
They don't even know what's happening.
No.
As far as they're concerned. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brony. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your
all
testimony
right,
today.
thank you, Senator Breezing. Thank you, committee.
Next proponent testifier. Seeing none, any opponent testifiers? Seeing none, any neutral testifiers? Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Brazy and members of the General Affairs Committee. My name is Christy Abraham, Christy Abraham. I'm here representing the League of Nebraska Municipalities. I first want to thank Senator Brewer for introducing this bill, and I also want to thank the Nebraska Press Association for coming to the League and talking to us about this bill and letting us comment and share our concerns about it. I actually want to talk about something that hasn't been discussed in this bill. It's the provision that eliminates the requirement that you can't publish on Sundays. This was actually brought to us by a member, and he said, don't you think Sunday is a pretty widely read newspaper day? And wouldn't it be nice to be able to have these notices be on Sunday when the most people could see them? And we thought that was a great idea, so we are very grateful for the Press Association to include that in this bill. The League is neutral for the reasons you can probably imagine, even though we appreciate that newspapers' costs have gone up and it's been 27 years since they've seen an increase. It will be an increase on municipalities to pay for these extra costs. As this committee likely knows, there are dozens and dozens of references in state law about when municipalities have to publish notices in the newspaper. So this will be an increase for us. And I also just wanted to put on the record that we are interested in this amendment that we are talking about. We certainly want to make clear that when the municipality gets the notice into the newspaper, that constitutes the notice, that it doesn't also have to go onto the statewide website. We want to make sure that the meetings are valid and that the publication is correct, even if it doesn't make it onto this website. So we're interested in any clarity that may be for that. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? You refer to the increased cost to municipalities. Any ballpark number you have in mind, or?
Senator, that is a
Hard to
great question.
quantify, I think.
Yeah, I was enviously looking at the fiscal note that apparently a couple of counties were asked what their fiscal impact were, and I didn't see that any municipalities were asked. My guess is some of our larger municipalities like Omaha and Lincoln, it would be similar probably to the larger counties that were asked.
Several hundred maybe.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you for your testimony. Any other neutral testimony?
Thank you. Chairman Breezy and members of the General Affairs Committee, for the record, my name is Elaine Menzel, Elaine Menzel, here today on behalf of the Nebraska Association of County Officials in a neutral capacity on LB 840. I think I did well by having Ms. Abraham testify first because she's essentially testified to the things that I would testify on behalf of the counties. She shared similarities with the issues that we would have raised. I think the website will be of benefit to all that were discussed by the Press Association. Like Ms. Abraham, I would like to express appreciation to them for coming to us first to discuss this. We were involved in the discussions to address our concerns as well. If you have any questions, I will attempt to answer them.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any questions? Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Ms. Menzel,
Thank you.
for your testimony. And I guess this also kind of applies to the league also, where she said it's a cost increase. Well, I would guess over the last 25 years, the buildings that these newspapers are in, their property taxes probably have increased also to help pay for the villages and counties. Do you think that's a true statement?
That would be my guess,
All right, thank
Senator.
you.
And I just, with respect to that, as Ms. Abraham discussed, there were a couple of fiscal notes from Douglas County and Lancaster County. I liked Senator Groney returned just in time for me to reference his terminology of modest. I would suspect that over all of the counties, that generally it would be a modest increase to acknowledge the fact that over the course of 25 plus years, that has not been raised.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Senator
Thank
Brandt. Seeing no other questions, thank you for testimony. Any other neutral testifiers? Seeing none, Senator Burr, would you like to close?
All right, you guys have probably asked enough questions. I thought Tom Brown brought up a good point. Property tax, electricity, natural gas, it don't matter what we're talking about. Everything that makes the world go round. You have a business have come up so much in 25 years. This is a pretty modest request. And you gotta remember that, you know, the soul of most of these little towns are their paper. That's how they communicate. As we get to the bigger towns, then the digital plays a bigger factor. But in the small towns, it's still a piece of paper that they read that really matters to them. So I just ask that you support this bill. And if you got any more questions, I'll entertain them.
Thank you, Senator Burr. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this. We had two letters in support, one from Amy Johnson from Springview, Nebraska, and one from Nicole Fox from the Platt Institute. No letters in opposition or neutral. Now we'll close the hearing on that bill. Next up, we have LB 1256. Well, welcome, Senator McKinney.
Good afternoon, Chairman Breezy and members of the General Affairs Committee. Today, we are here to discuss LB 1256, which would change provisions relating to public libraries and require the election of library boards of a city of the metropolitan class. Contrary to popular belief, I decided to bring LB 1256 not as a slight to the city of Omaha or the representatives, but because of my commitment to the people of Omaha. Acting with personal vengeances has never been me, and that'll never be me. The people of Omaha have reached out to me in masses to express their concerns with the operations of the Omaha Public Library Board. I do have a platform to stand in solidarity with the people of Omaha and to their opposition to what has happened with the library board as of late. And in that, I stand in solidarity to put in some changes. Yes, this targets the library board today, but if the people ask me to amend this bill to add the personnel board, the planning board, or any other board that exists in Omaha, I would do it at the drop of a dime. The legislature did give Omaha an option to decide how to select the library board. And yes, we can respect their decisions and processes, but when needed, the legislature also has the power to reevaluate that option and make changes, especially when issues of transparency and a lack of accountability are placed at our doorstep. I am all for innovation and moving the city of Omaha to the future. But sometimes to move into the future, we have to make changes to protect the rights and concerns of taxpayers. As someone who used to frequent public libraries while growing up, I understand the importance of public libraries. That being said, major developments cannot supersede the people. Making a library board a publicly elected office gives the people voice. In doing so, they do not have to rely on the judgments of the mayor or the city council on who is and who is not appointed. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Brandt?
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Senator McKinney, for bringing this bill. I would just ask, could you state for the record what happened and why you're bringing this legislation?
So what was it? When we were back for, I think, special session, I began to get some information that the library board were doing some things that the public didn't necessarily agree with as far as the future operations of the library. Fast forward to this session, the city of Omaha decided to sell the downtown property up for some development and move the location of the library in Omaha to another location downtown.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Senator Brandt. Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Senator McKinney, thank you for being here, bringing this bill. So looking at your bill, just so I'm clear, it would maintain the size of the board at 9 members, is that right?
Yes.
And then it would make 2 elected at large and 1 elected from each city council district?
Yeah.
Are you aware of the current board? I know we got a couple of letters on this regarding just the, I guess, diversity of the board. Are you aware of whether the current board of those 9 members, are they equally distributed amongst the city council districts currently, or do you know where they come from in the city of Omaha?
I can't say it off the top of my head, but I have heard that there's some issues with diversity on that board.
I see a few people over there kind of responding to my question. Maybe they'll testify and I can ask them that. So Senator Brandt asked the question about kind of the underlying issue. My impression, and you can answer this as a question, is that there was a conversation about the future of what the library should be in Omaha, and there was a great amount of community engagement, and then the ultimate resolution didn't appear to integrate any of that community input into that. Does that sound accurate?
That's correct. The community feels as though, from what I've heard and from when I've talked to people, that their voices were basically disregarded by the city.
And the letters that we got said that there's a mechanism in place where the mayor appoints these people to the board and the city council approves. And so the opposition to your bill would say that there's sufficient community engagement and input into the library board. Would you say that you think your position would be an elected library board may be more responsive to the concerns of the citizens?
Yes, I think an elected board holds individuals more accountable. Although the city and council approves the current board after the mayor decides to appoint, there are some issues with transparency and accountability because the mayor appoints those individuals.
Do you know if the mayor ask people to step off the board, or?
I think it might be possible. I'll have to double check on that. Or they maybe have to finish their term.
And there's the people behind you that I think they might also have to answer that. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Kavanaugh. Anyone else? Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, for those of us that don't stay on top of the events as they transpire in Omaha, so they made the decision to take an existing library. Now, I take it the committee or the library board okayed the idea of that building going from its current status and being bulldozed and turned into a skyscraper, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And the library then gets moved to a new location and it's a new library, or what's their plan to move beyond where it's going to be now?
So they plan to move it to another building downtown, and then I believe the central library will be moved to 72nd in Omaha, 72nd in Dodge, or somewhere around that area.
Okay. And the current location is where?
It's downtown, like right at the Jean Leahy Mall. It's kind of, yeah, right in the center of downtown.
All right, thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you, Senator Brewer. Senator Groney.
So there's two libraries downtown, the central and this one?
No, the one that they decided to move was the central one. They're moving into another location. Then they're opening up another location at another spot. So it will only be one library downtown.
It'll be a smaller version
Yeah,
downtown.
yes.
How, I don't know, in the area, how accessible is that downtown library now to a kid? Can
The
he
one
walk,
currently-
ride his bicycle to it, or
Yeah, you can.
it's
Yeah.
that close to residential areas?
Yeah, I mean, it's downtown. It's a lot of commercial properties downtown. I mean, there's residential areas within riding the bike distance, but still, you still would have to.
So you'd have to have mom or dad drop you off. As
or
far as a
ride
kid,
the
I
bus.
think of libraries, I think of kids.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Groney. Senator Lowell.
Thank you. And because it's metropolitan area, the buses stop outside the library now.
Yes, I'm not sure if buses will be stopping outside of the new location though. I don't know if the bus
The
runs
new
over there.
temporary location or the new location.
It will be a new location. It won't be temporary.
And this new location you're thinking is probably out where the Crossroads Mall was, is that?
Yeah, there will be a new location out
72nd
there,
and
but then
Dodge.
there still would be a new location for the downtown library.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Just
Senator
wanna
Lowell.
put it on mind.
Anyone else, Senator Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Just, I guess, clarifying questions. So the current downtown library is on the Orbit line, which is the bus rapid transit that runs down Dodge and Douglas Street to, and I think it's on 15th Street is where the current public library is.
Yeah,
And then the Orbit runs in a direct east-west pattern. And the new downtown library, they're going to move something like 4 blocks off of the Orbit line,
yeah,
which would actually, in my guess, would be decrease the accessibility of the downtown library.
I would agree.
And as to the Crossroads Mall section that Senator Lowe was just referencing, my guess is, well, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's no public plan about putting a library there. There's been some of these, the emails you were talking about and those discussions that were done in behind closed doors that has maybe given rise to the question about transparency in how we operate our libraries, transparency in how we operate our libraries.
Yes.
Is that accurate? And so when we're undertaking these serious decisions about major infrastructure in our city, your objective would be to do those sorts of things out in the open and make sure that everybody's input is considered and actually has an opportunity for input.
Yes, especially changes of this magnitude. The public should be fully aware of what's going on and it shouldn't be questions.
And when we're making those sorts of changes, their input should be engaged before the decision is made.
For sure.
And in the particular instance, your bill is not just directed at this one instance. This is just an example of a problem, right?
Yes.
And so I guess the question is, the intention is to make a transparent process that's accountable to the citizens, that it requires input, that prevents situations like this from being repeated.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Anyone else? Senator Groney.
So as far as you know, Senator McKinney, there was no talk or any talk about a rundown building. It was time to replace the library because it wasn't being used. Do you believe that this came from the top down, economic development? Mayor wanted it, mayor told her appointees to do something. Is that the process you think has happened, or am I?
It kind of seems like that. It's not really clear, but that it seems as though there were some conversations about what was going to happen about the future. And it would surprise me to say that they made a decision to do a development of this magnitude and it wasn't a prolonged conversation. It didn't just happen starting in September. I feel like something of this size was planned out way prior then. September to January.
Could you see a process where it was a combination of appointees and elected officials and elected members?
Yes,
So you get both sides of the
yeah.
city government side of it plus the citizen side of it. A lot of boards are that way.
Yeah, depends on how it works.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cronin. And so the sale of this property, it was a decision of the Omaha City Council, correct?
It was the council combination with the library board as well. It's yeah,
But it would have been a vote of the council that made this move along.
yeah.
Okay. And just so I'm clear here, the library board wouldn't have had the ability to veto that decision.
They wouldn't have had the ability to veto the city council's decision, but they would have had the ability to be more of a voice for the people of Omaha.
Okay. Did the city council do this in an open meeting, I assume?
Yeah,
With the
city
potential,
council.
with the potential for
Yeah.
public input?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Wayne?
Just Senator Gurney's comments, kind of just so people know, right now, almost 8 to 10 bus lines run downtown. Where the proposed location on 72nd and Dodge, there's only two, one going across the orbit. So it is a huge concern for access for public. Pretty much, I think almost 8 to 12, and I think about it on the northwest, that 4 goes all the way down. So that's the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Senator.
And I have a bill coming up like in another hearing, so I'll probably have to step out and I'll try to be back for closing.
Perfect.
All right,
That'll work. Thank you.
no problem.
First proponent testifier.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane Skinner, Janeskinnner. I am not representing any of these organizations, but I am a former Omaha Public Library employee and I'm a current library science student at UNO. And I'm here to talk about this bill because I have a very strong ongoing concern in the future of Nebraska's libraries. I'd like to read to you a little bit from the current Nebraska state statute regarding public libraries, 51-201.02. The legislature finds and declares that public libraries perform services which are vitally important for the maintenance of an educated and democratic society. The legislature further finds that an educated and culturally aware society is increasingly important in an economy in which Nebraskans must compete on a global scale. So LB 1256 is about placing power back in the hands of the citizens and rectifies a power imbalance that allows one individual, in this case the mayor, to supersede the wishes of the taxpayers. It puts a system of checks and balances in place, protecting one of the most trusted and beloved government institutions. LB 1256 would require citizens with a population of more than 300,000 to maintain a publicly elected library board, which would mimic the representation of our city council. This doesn't require state funding, doesn't require the creation of new task forces. It simply requires you to pass this bill. So the impetus for this, as Senator McKinney testified, was that current library board appointees were handpicked by the mayor and a group of private developers. Back in September, we received a group of emails through a FOIA request showing that 3 of the board members that we have out of that, at that time 8, were recruited by developers themselves, and 2 of them were involved in conversations with the mayor about privatizing the library board at that time. Anyone who believes in the privatization of library boards does not belong on a library board, and it is a fundamental misunderstanding of their purpose. So the use of an appointed board, while intended to serve the public, has shown the potential for cronyism. Omaha's appointed structure for the library board is controlled by city charter and can be reviewed or altered during the city charter review conventions, which are required every 10 years. That review convention is made up by 25 members but 15 of those 25 members would have to approve. So that's why we're coming before you today and asking you to pass this bill, because we don't believe it can be done at the city level, since those members are appointed by the mayor, which means that there's no system of checks and balances. Furthermore, as of February 1st, Omaha is removing the main library from the heart of the downtown. Oh, I'm fine. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. First, I want to apologize. I don't think I welcomed you.
Hi.
Welcome. You bet. Any questions? Go ahead, Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Ms. Skinner. Did you have anything you need to finish your remarks before I ask you any questions?
I mean,
My
you
first
have-
question, are you were done with your remarks?
You have my testimony, so, and I think Senator McKinney covered a lot of it, so, yeah.
You heard my question about the makeup of the current board. Do you have any idea about that?
As far as I'm aware at this time, there's only one member of that 9-person board who is in the core of the city. I might be a little outdated, but the vast majority of the people on the board come from the exurbs or the suburbs of the city of Omaha.
And, well, first question I want to ask, in light of that, it's Valentine's Day, and we're talking about libraries. What's the thing you love the most about the library?
When I worked there, I just really liked talking about books because I'm a big book nerd. And I really liked the level of community trust. I liked going to the store and having people's kids recognize me. It really made me feel valued, and it really made me feel like the library was something that people believed in and really liked about their community.
Thank you. So, and the story that Senator McKinney referenced about kind of what happened, and you talked about the FOIA, and I followed very closely the actions of the library board through your Twitter account over the fall as you went to all of these library board meetings. And can you just sum up, I guess, what the people were saying at those meetings?
Sure. You mean like the citizens, what the citizens are saying? Yeah.
Citizen
There were a series of 6 public forums in addition to, I think I've attended 3 or 4 of the formal library board meetings. And in those 10 meetings, almost every single person spoke in opposition to the plan as we now understand it, which is to move W. Dale Clark off the parcel that it currently sits on, demolish it, sell it to Mutual of Omaha, take half of what is currently a W. Dale Clark and move it to a warehouse at 14th and Jones, and take the other half and move it to an old abandoned Shopco at 84th and Center. And then in a few years, move that to 72nd and Dodge. So you're talking about 2 moves within probably less than 5 years of a huge collection of historical documents, like a lot of the historical documents of like the city of Omaha and of the state of Nebraska.
And so you said the comments were largely opposed about the plan as we know it now.
I want to say in those 10 meetings, I heard 2 people speak in support of this plan out of several hundred comments.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the large amount of interest came as a result of these FOIA requests.
Correct.
And it was not as a result of a publicly released plan.
No. There was no knowledge that any of this was going to happen in any way until those FOIA emails came out.
And so the public had to basically go around the public notice process that we just had a long conversation about if you were here before.
Correct.
So the public had no official notice of this through the public notification process. The board didn't let people know that this is what a plan they were considering before those meetings. And so this was a formative public engagement on the subject without the board members telling the citizens that's what they were looking at.
The board actually, several people on the board have told me that they were not aware of these plans until those FOIA emails came out. They were also out of the loop. I couldn't speculate as to why that is, but it's also true that none of them really oppose it. So maybe the mayor didn't think that they were worth looping in.
Do you know, maybe I should ask this of somebody else, somebody from the city, if the library owns the land they're on, or is the city own it, or what's the structure?
I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Any other questions? Senator Brent?
Just a point of clarification, if the mayor appoints the board members, does the city council approve those, or does the city council have the majority vote and say, no, we don't like Tom Brandt as a board member, pick again?
They have the ability to vet those people, but I've never seen that happen in any meaningful way. They tend to rubber stamp them.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Brandt. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
testimony here today. Next proponent testifier, please. Welcome.
Lou. Many thanks for the opportunity to speak today before the General Affairs Committee regarding Legislative Bill 1256. My name is Edwin Schroeder, EDWIN-SCHROEDER. I speak today as a librarian and a recent transplant to Nebraska and Omaha. I recently retired after 30 years of working as a librarian at Yale University and served the last 10 years as the director of the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library. My wife and I relocated to Omaha this past summer as she took a teaching position at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. We now live downtown, and over the last, since we've arrived, I've had the opportunity to explore the town, the city, the architecture, and the history, and not surprisingly, became a regular user of the Omaha Public Library. I'd like to make 4 observations about this process and 4 suggestions about how it could have been improved. First, the rollout of the proposed plan was opaque at best. There were rumors on social media, as alluded to earlier, articles and news sources hinting at opportunities and changes coming, but there was never a clear statement as to what was happening, why, and how these changes would benefit the library and the residents of the city. Even now, the decision-making process is unclear. What decisions were the responsibility of the board, and what options did they actually have? What is the role of city council, and what is the role of the mayor's office? And throughout the entire process, I've often wondered who is driving the bus. Second, it is still unclear why the city has pushed such an aggressive timeline for moving the contents of the Clark Library to a new location by November. We are now, middle of February. We are looking at a 6 to 7 month process. The move of dozens of staff and thousands of books will take time to plan, orchestrate, and do right, and it's not a trivial task. As noted earlier, among the collections of the library stewards is an excellent collection of genealogy and local history that documents the history of Omaha and Nebraska. There are hundreds of items that are either unique or known in only a very few locations. This includes books, pamphlets, photographs, ephemera, newspapers, directories, maps, atlases, and realia, always a favorite topic. This material is essential for telling the story of Omaha today and in the future. To move this collection requires safe and careful handling and tracking. You can't just throw it in a box. After all, you don't want to be like the final scene from the movie, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the Ark disappears into a warehouse where no one can locate it. Third, there are more than just direct costs for the initial moves. There are also indirect costs. Not only are staff and board expected to plan and execute the move to a new temporary location, develop workflows and procedures for these new locations, create new programs with appropriate outreach. In addition, hopefully, they will be asked to contribute to the planning for a new central library. This will impact not only the work of the proposed locations, but also activities of other branches. Finally, I'd highlight that the planning process for the library and its needs is backwards. The facility reports, as we noted multiple times in discussions of 2010 and 2017, focus on the physical needs of the library system, with the Clark Library, the current building, ranking 4th on the list of priorities.
I would like to stop you there to be consistent.
Yeah.
But if you have a few points you'd like to make and finish up,
I
that'd
can
be
finish
great.
in 1 minute, and if you don't mind me talking even faster than I normally do.
We do have your written testimony here, which is good.
Okay. Normally an organization, okay, I'll just get down. Suggestions. First, embrace the Omaha Public Library as a great resource for the city, its residents, and visitors. Second, the next steps in the library need to be clearly laid out. This includes a timeline, a feedback loop, and a clear understanding of the decision process and decision makers. For example, an announcement for announcing the new library, it was stated that all the stakeholders will decide what the project will move forward, and then a project proposal will go to the Omaha Public Library Board of Trustees for approval. Who are the stakeholders? What is their role? What is the role of the public? Who are the ultimate stakeholders? Who's making the decisions as to what's in, what's out, and where should the library, central library facility be located. Third, communication has to improve. What should have been an amazing opportunity for the library to think creatively about its mission has become bogged down in a lack of transparency, confusion about roles and decision-making, perceived threats to the Omaha Public Library, and a cynicism that although contributions and opinions from the public are said to be welcome, that is not the case. And fourth, and this gets to the bill, the board of the Omaha Public Library needs to be accountable to the people of Omaha. They are the ultimate trustees, or the trustees are responsible for the resource of the library that serves the entire community. And I think it's important to highlight it's the entire community. And the board needs to have the independence to be the advocates and supporters for the library. Many thanks for the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for that, sir.
Thank you for the
Any
extra
questions?
2 minutes.
Sir Brent.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Real quick, is this the main library in Omaha?
The one that's downtown at the Clark Library, yes, it is.
And from your testimony, so there's 13 branches?
My understanding, and others who have been here longer can confirm this, 12 branches, and there has been a proposal for at least many years for a 13th branch in the south. I'm still learning geography.
But this is headquarters?
Yes, that is
Right.
correct.
That's what I need to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brent. Senator Capito.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Mr. Schroeder, for being here. I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite thing about the library?
I would say it's a combination of, and this is bad on my part, collections, but it's also the staff and the fact it's open. Anyone can use it. I think that's really important. Coming from a university that at times limit access, being an institution that anyone can walk in the door and use it, and it's free. I think that's.
So being as you came here from somewhere else, are you aware of other ways other cities or other places structure their library? Do other places have an elected board? Are you aware?
I would say if you look, you can find a model. Almost every model exists. I think you can have, there are places where you often have a strong mayoral. Often it's a city appointed. Other places, the board is independent. Sometimes it's not elected. Sometimes it's self-selected, which is an interesting concept in terms of these just in perpetuity are selecting themselves.
You mean people on the board pick the next people on the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, the other option, it also is, do you have a mixed bag? You can have elected, and you can also have folks who are ex officio serving on the board as well.
And so you moved here during this, or you've been here longer? How long have you been?
We arrived in August of this past year.
Okay, so basically right when this.
Right as this whole thing got interesting.
And you alluded to, or you made, I guess, you hit on the head that the fact that the whole process was opaque. Do you know who was ultimately the decider, who got to decide whether the library moved from the downtown location or not?
So there are places where there were decisions in election, or there were votes taken along the way. And I think one of the problems, and so there was first a vote by the Board of Trustees, and they were given basically, my understanding is that basically here's what your marching orders, and they tried to negotiate somewhat of an improved, but they really had no choice. And then it went to the council, and there was a hearing that was had. I spoke at that hearing, and then the next, let's see, how did this work? Then the next day we had the announcement about the move of Mutual of Omaha, and then a week or two later they made their vote. It's never entirely clear. So I would go back to some of the comments we made earlier. There was a call when this first started bumbling up in the fall. There was an opportunity for people to give your feedback, give your comments. There was, I think I heard at one board meeting, there were more than 3,000 comments submitted to the board and whoever was gathering that information, and that it was supposed to go into a strategic plan. The strategic plan, as of right now, is scheduled to come out in March, and yet we were making decisions before that strategic plan is completed. That just the logic there doesn't follow. And it also gets tied into and this kept coming up repeatedly, what was the urgency? In theory, the announcement about the move of Mutual of Omaha to downtown to that site was the urgency, but it's difficult for me, and I managed major projects, that they are going to be able to start digging, that they will have completed their design and are ready to start digging by November. So there's an urgency that's somewhat, there's a question there as to why, they're still not clear what that urgency is. And there's also a cost that's going to come to the city and to the library as a result of that urgency.
Can I just ask one clarifying question? You mentioned you spoke at a public comment for a public forum or comment to the city council.
Yeah.
That comment period was about the city council's vote on whether to sign a lease on a temporary location. Is that
It
right?
was for three, so there were three decisions they were looking at. There was the lease for the proposed downtown location. It was the lease for the proposed administrative location that's in the old, I'm not sure what Shopco is, but it's strip mall is how I think of it. And then there was also a lease to hire a developer to basically manage the design, move process, et cetera, for this project. With little or no that I'm aware of, it maybe have experience in building a building, but has little to no experience in the library design.
So just circle back and clarify. Those are three separate things, but they're all about where the library would go.
Yeah.
None of them were a vote about the disposition of the current location, right?
No, that is correct. My understanding is that they were voting to approve the lease for the two new locations and then for the contract to help with the move.
And then as soon as that hearing was over, it was announced that Mutual of Omaha was moving to
The next morning, it was magic timing. Amazing how that timing worked. Sorry, apologies, sarcasm is not necessary. So it was the next day, yes. And if that was so far along in the planning, and there had been hints in the newspapers, oh, there's going to be a major announcement, there's a major announcement coming, but there was nothing that was provided ahead of time. And because I'm sure that people would have had a different response or a different way of presenting their concerns. And it also ended up so one of the concerns I have is that announcement the library's future is not first and foremost. It's more, we're now focused on the excitement of a large tower in downtown Omaha. And so the library and the role the library plays in the community slips. And that's not appropriate, not fair. So anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Kavanaugh, Senator Lowell.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Schroeder, for coming and speaking today. What brings somebody from New Haven to Omaha, from probably one of the most premier libraries in the country, and then the book depository?
So I would say two things. So the last 30 years, my wife and I have lived in New Haven. I've had a great career there. And I said, all right, 30 years is enough, or 32 years, almost 30 years is enough. And my wife's like, it was my turn to be the trailing spouse, is the best way to describe it. She's a math professor, and she had an opportunity to come to UNO, to be part of a team to develop a whole new curriculum for teaching mathematics to students who are not math majors. And she loves it, and that's really important. So, and it's been fun here. It's been totally different. I've learned a lot in the last 3 months or 6 months.
That's an incredible library you left.
Oh, it is. And I would say if you've never had a chance, if you ever had a chance to go to New Haven and visit the Beinecke, it is one of the great libraries to visit. Unfortunately, with COVID, they're still not open, but anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Anyone else?
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you for your testimony.
Yep.
Next proponent testifier, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Whew. I'm terrified, by the way. So, okay.
No
Hello,
problem.
my name is Nicole Wheeler, NicoleWheeler. I'm a lifelong resident of Omaha, and I co-own the Dundee Book Company bookstore, and I co-direct the Omaha Lit Fest with my husband, Ted Wheeler, who's the author of 3 books set in Nebraska. Omaha Lit Fest is a festival for readers, and we have worked closely with the Omaha Public Library and the Omaha Public Library Foundation on its production. I'm here as a proponent of LB 1256 to ensure that the community can choose the representatives of the library board to protect the library as a public good. This board is currently appointed, and these appointments rarely are focused on what is best for the library, while other city business can take priority in that decision. One example of this is in June 2016,
Mayor Stothert replaced the library board president, Mike Meyer, after public disagreements about what was best for the library and its purpose of serving the community. This was after Meyer tried to start a public discussion in 2015 about what would make for a world-class library system and pushed back against the mayor for the city to budget more towards library services. At that time, Omaha Library Director Gary Wasden said the nation's best library systems generally have a dedicated funding source, such as a tax levy, solely for the library. Many are governed by an appointed or elected board that operates separately from city or county government. Wasden was quoted by the Omaha World Herald saying, "The closer you can get to having the public in charge and being able to make that decision, the stronger the library system is going to be." Successful library systems around the country have proven that statement out, and I believe that the residents of Omaha deserve a strong library system that grows a love of learning and literature. As someone with an interest in supporting literature and books, as well as a decade-long career in technology, when the discussion around balancing books and technology came to the forefront of the library fiasco discussion, I applied for a position on the library board. I submitted an application, followed up after 2 weeks, and never received any sort of response until the day the city announced the newest board member. While I had very low expectations that my application would be accepted, the lack of response left me wondering if I was even emailing the correct person to apply. If the city can't take the appointed board seriously and manage the application process in a transparent and timely manner, then we should find another way to create and manage this board. For Nebraska to create vibrant communities with strong libraries, an elected board for libraries in areas of this size is key. The public deserves to be able to hold the board accountable for how it shapes the library's future. In an October 2014 Omaha World Herald article regarding the library budget process, Mayor Stothert herself said that you can't have a non-elected group of people who are appointed by the mayor managing taxpayer dollars. I believe that we should get the public in charge of making the decisions about our library system so that we can have the strongest library system possible.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for being here, Ms. Wheeler. So first off, what's your favorite thing about the library?
The community. I mean, it's the people. It's why I have a bookstore. It's getting together with people. It is talking about your favorite books. It's seeing your neighbors. I work in technology, so a lot of times people are virtual, and I love being able to get together with my neighbors in things that revolve around books.
Thank you. So you said, you alluded to the story about Mike Meyer being basically the mayor removing him from the board. Do you know how that, I guess, went down? Did the mayor ask him to resign? Can the mayor force somebody to resign? How does that work?
It was, so when they're appointed, you can let the mayor know that you want to basically re-up your appointment. But this article said that she was ending it. So it can be ended at the choice of either side of it. The person who had gotten appointed to the board, they can say, I don't want to do this anymore. Or the mayor can say, we're not going to renew this for you. So it was not renewed on the city side.
So even if, though we have a process that requires the city council input, the city council doesn't get any input if somebody gets removed from the board then?
Right, because that's down the line further.
And the individual maybe can be removed against their own will then?
Right.
Okay. Which, if we were to have an elected board, the mayor would not be able to remove the board members.
Right, it's just the people.
So do you think when the mayor has a history of removing people and we have a conflicted situation, that perhaps the mayor could exert influence over the actions of the board?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Especially after attending some of the library board meetings recently.
Are you saying that some people overtly said that
Not that they
were feeling
overtly
suppression?
said that, but there are definitely conversations or perhaps text messages happening that let people know, what the city wants or what the mayor wants this board to be doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Kavanaugh. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next proponent testifier. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Breezy and the members of the General Affairs Committee. Before I start, I am here representing myself, although I am a employee of the Omaha Public Library. I attended.
Go ahead and start with your name and spell.
Oh, sorry. Yes, my name
No
is
problem.
Kimara Snipes. That is Kimara. Snipes, Snipes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I attended the most recent Omaha Public Library Board meeting. I didn't go to speak. Instead, I went to listen. I wanted to view the interaction between the board members and the people who were there to be heard. It was quite obvious why so much tension exists around the issue of tearing down the main library. As a former elected official myself, and as someone who serves on numerous boards in Omaha and Nebraska, and as the president of a successful neighborhood alliance, I was extremely disappointed by the behavior and the vote of the president of the Omaha Public Library Board. I was also disappointed by the votes of the remainder of the board. It was obvious to me that they, or at least the half who showed up that day, didn't have a clue what the pulse of the community was. Public libraries serve anyone and everyone. I am an avid patron of the library, but in particular, they are vital to the most vulnerable populations. The number of people who come through a door daily are not just those checking out books, but they are job seekers, people seeking to improve their education, those seeking technology assistance for themselves, those suffering from poverty, and more. Right now, Omaha Libraries trustees are concentrated in wealthy, primarily white neighborhoods in West Omaha, and a small, wealthy section of Midtown. There's practically no representation from North or South Omaha, and it shows in the decisions that are being made. We need library trustees who understand the vital services the library provides and who ensure that all citizens are represented in the policy decisions that affect their lives, not just those in wealthy neighborhoods. When I made a decision as a school board member for Omaha Public Schools, I made that decision based on the feedback that I received from community members, from parents, from people who lived and worked with and dealt with Omaha Public Schools on a daily basis. They had lived experience and they trusted me because of my own lived experience. They knew that when I made a decision, even if we did not agree, they had the opportunity to talk about it. I had the opportunity to listen, and everyone had the opportunity to express themselves. I can't name one person who has discussed this particular situation with me who feels that same sense of trust and accountability with the current board as it operates. There is no trust established. There is no accountability, and this would change if the board were elected. Don't get me wrong, this problem is not limited to Omaha. With the lack of geographic, racial, and socioeconomic diversity on the board. Indeed, it's an issue with many appointed boards. Lincoln City Libraries, the second largest system in the state, has a modified appointment system where library boards receive applications and give the city council recommendations, but that system still results in board members coming primarily from the wealthiest and least diverse neighborhoods of the city.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions? Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here, Ms. Snipes. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Well, first question, favorite thing about the library?
Absolutely. When you asked the question, I actually wrote down my thoughts. And so to me, libraries, it's about social strength, which contributes to civic health. Libraries capture the social ties, networks, levels of trust, and exchange of knowledge and ideas in the community. And I love that.
I love it too. I appreciated you mentioned the people that the library serves.
Yes.
And you mentioned a lot of people that haven't been brought up yet. Would you say, and this is like my impression from going to the downtown library, but that the downtown library in particular, the W. Dale Clark branch, serves a lot more people that you were talking about?
Absolutely. And during the presentations at City Council and elsewhere, there were maps that were used, but they weren't exactly accurate. When you visit the main branch, which is downtown, like I said, those numbers were captured from book checkouts, but the traffic that moves within the library is so much more than that. And so all that I named is what you see coming through the library system, especially the downtown library.
Yeah. I went on our last recess day, actually, went and visited the W. Dale Clark Library downtown, and I saw basically they have a whole bank of computers, and there were individuals sitting at the computers doing different types of lessons and things like that. That's what you're talking about. I just recently discovered, actually, the library has an available program to take continuing education learning, so I'm taking Java myself, but they have ACT prep SAT prep, CL.
A number of
those-
resources available.
And that's kind of what you were talking about, is that it's providing those services to people for free that are not necessarily book checkouts, but are services that are vital to the community. And those people are using it because they don't have a computer or a place to access that, right?
Absolutely. And when you say that, I also have a workforce development background. So I think about it like that. But even as someone who has worked amongst schools, it also fills in gaps there as well that maybe our education system can't.
And I think you also spoke at some of these meetings that I talked to Ms. Skinner about. I don't need to rehash everything, but would your impression be the same, that almost everybody that had any knowledge about the situation we're speaking of opposed to the ultimate action that was taken?
Absolutely. And I would go a step further and say that when I witnessed the board meeting, and you're talking to someone who has actually ran meetings, I just didn't feel that people were heard intentionally.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Any other questions, Senator Brandt?
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Ms. Snipe, for your testimony today. Let's imagine that the skyscraper didn't happen. What is the status of the Omaha library system before this event? Was it good, or we still need to change things?
The Omaha library system is actually great. And I say that because it's one of the most trusted parts of the city. If you poll people in the city and you really try to gauge where they have trust within the different departments of the city, the library is the highest ranking one. As someone who has worked within the library, not speaking as an employee today, I would say that there's always room for change. As Senator Kavanaugh mentioned, when you talk about, one of my favorite sayings is that the library is so much more than books. I myself create programming for young people. What I have done the most is create programming that focuses on trauma. And one of the things I always do with the young people I work with is start by going in and showing them everything else that is available through the library. I highly encourage anyone, if they have a chance, to just go and check out the online resources that exist. And you will see what I mean when I say that the library is so much more than just books.
All right. Thank you.
No, thank you, Senator
Thank
Brandt.
you, Senator Brandt. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you so much for your time today.
You bet. Next proponent testifier. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Breezy. Good afternoon. My name is Laura England Biggs, LAURA-ENGLAND-BIGGS. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the Nebraska Library Association. I'm currently the past president. I'm here to voice our support for the bill before you, LB 1256. Public libraries strive to serve all of the population segments of their designated service area. We believe having elected library board members from each ward of the metropolitan region would support that effort. Each individual branch library would have representation for their segment of the larger population they serve. Libraries focus services to meet the needs of job seekers, entrepreneurs, those with special needs, refugees, new members of the community, those who are isolated, visiting, homeless, educators and students, families, and the elderly. Having board members who know the unique needs of those demographic segments for their region of the metropolitan community will make libraries stronger and more relevant to those served. As the public library director in Fremont, I know firsthand the importance of having a library board filled with a representative cross-section of my community. Board members listen to their constituents, whether they're residents from the same voting ward or people who represent similar or different social characteristics, be it conservative, liberal, parents, retired folks, etc. Board members are then able to give valuable input on services and programs based on that community feedback. It appears that the Omaha Public Library Board is an example of disproportionate representation across certain areas of the metro area. This leaves entire segments of the community unrepresented or underrepresented in recent discussions about library programs and services, let alone locations of facilities. So I would encourage you to vote yes on LB 1256. And I've also included a statement from the American Library Association that has come out in favor of LB 1256 in accordance with what the Nebraska Library Association has said.
Okay, Thank you for that. Any questions, Senator Kavanaugh?
I've got to ask you for everything about the library.
I love that it's a leveling ground for the public. Anyone can walk through the doors and use my services. I love helping people find some place to live when their daughter kicked them out. That's one of my favorite stories, is helping Barbara find a place to live because her daughter said, "You can't live here anymore, Mom. You're driving me nuts." And I found a way to connect her with low-income housing in our community.
Thank you for that. That's a good point. The libraries do way more than just check out books, not just check out books, but check out books.
Absolutely.
So with your connection to the Nebraska Library Association, American Library Association, are you aware of any other cities anywhere that have elected library boards, or anybody else who's?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Oh. And you said it seems that our board is disproportionate in terms of its breakdown. Do you have an idea of where the folks come from that are on the board?
I did not break it down by address. I just kind of looked very generally, and it does appear to be very Western Omaha and Central Omaha.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. And any other questions? Seeing none, you indicate you're a public library director, or the public library director in Fremont.
Yes.
How's the board arrived at there?
In Fremont, it is an appointed board.
Appointed
Our
board.
mayor takes suggestions from the current library board and is very careful to spread it across our 4 wards.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony here.
Thank you.
Next proponent testifier. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name's Joanne Ferguson Kavanaugh. Happy Valentine's Day. And I passionately support this bill. It's JOANNEFERGUSON space CAVANAUGH. I'm a retired public librarian. For 33 years, I've done public library service work in Nebraska. My last 25 years were spent at Omaha Public Library, and the final 10 years as the branch manager of the Charles B. Washington branch, which is in North Omaha, and then finally out at Best Johnson Elkhorn branch, which is on the whole other side of the city. I've been elected to serve on many boards throughout my lifetime: professional, civic, neighborhood, historical, and I currently serve on the board of the Great Plains Black History Museum and U.S. Servos. And from my board experience, I know that it takes teamwork to make the dream work, and we have a problem at Omaha Public Library. The Institute for Museum and Library Services 2019 Public Library Survey showed that Nebraska has some of the highest library use statistics in the country. Per capita, Nebraska ranked 14th for library materials circulated, 5th for children materials circulated, and 6th for computer sessions. Because the library budget fails to meet the needs despite the high demands, this leaves high use books tattered, needing replaced, carpet, furniture, and computers long overdue for replacement, windows dirty, and weed-filled landscaping due to failed water sprinklers. It's overall neglect. Omaha spent roughly half the average per capita of 9 peer cities identified by the Omaha Chamber of Commerce in 2019. To put this in perspective within Nebraska, Senator Lowe and Kearney, you have a beautiful library that's a source of pride, and you spend approximately $57 per capita. And that's compared to Omaha's $30. So basically twice as much as we get. And then Senator Arch and Papillion, you also have a wonderful library and also a digital space in the new Landing Recreation Center. And you spend approximately $50 per capita compared to Omaha's $30. So do you think these libraries could continue to provide high quality materials and services the community needs if they had to operate on $30? With Kearney, that would be looking at a budget of half the size that they currently have. Even the OPL Library Administration have said for years that The library does not seek to grow their usage, because if more residents utilize the library, they wouldn't have the staff or the materials to adequately serve them. So we just quietly leave them unserved. Appointed board members have failed to push for adequate library funding, even as Omaha has fallen short of its peers and as the library has decreased public access hours and purchasing due to budget restraints. And reduced access hours means that in neighborhoods like in North Omaha, the Charles B. Washington branch, people who rely on the library for computer usage and internet for job seeking, and believe me, there's a lot of people who do home health care work and they need to do their government reporting. They don't have a computer at home. They can't do it on the phone. They come to the library. The hours are cut. That means whatever little time they have left in their day, they are not going to be able to use the library because those hours have been cut.
I'm going to
In
have to.
closing,
Go ahead.
thank you for your support.
You bet. Thank you for that. Any questions, Senator Kavanaugh?
Well, first, did you have anything else you want to say in closing?
Well, I just would like to say that we really need to elect board of members who are passionate about library services. And right now with appointed members, obviously they're not even passionate enough to attend a board meeting where the whole shift of what the main library is doing was decided by 4 members of a 9-member appointed board. 4 people didn't even show up for the meeting. 1 person abstained from that vote, which changed how the library is going to operate from now on.
Well, thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Ms. Ferguson Kavanaugh. Are we related?
I'm labor union Kavanaugh, you're politician Kavanaugh.
It's better than lawyer Kavanaugh. Thank you for being here. So you kind of hit on the point I was looking at. I was looking at your comments and you didn't read this part, but you said it that 4 out of the 9 were there, or 5 out of the 9 were there, only 4 voted for it. If less than half of the legislature voted for something, it wouldn't go forward. It wouldn't be approved. Are you familiar with the rules of the library board? They don't have to, it's just the majority of those present?
Well, apparently it was a quorum. There were 5 members present of the 9, but only 4 voted for that decision, 1 abstained.
Okay.
So there was a quorum, but also, just so you know, in the last couple of years, they've had 10 meetings where there have been no quorum, which is almost like a whole year's, in the last 4 years, there have been 10 meetings with no quorum. So that means like a whole year's worth of meetings. I mean, can you imagine operating here with that kind of participation? And then a lot of the members have less than 75% participation rate for even showing up for the meetings. They're not accountable.
Well, I didn't get you to ask me my first question, which is, what's your favorite thing with the library?
Well, my favorite part of working at the library was working at Charles B. Washington branch. There was a different thing every day, and it was more than books. I was more of a social worker connecting people with resources and places in the community that could help serve whatever needs they had. So it was the fun part of it was every day was different. You never knew what the day would bring.
So thank you for that. So in terms of, you said the most important thing is getting people who are passionate and who will actually show up. Do you think there are ways that we could, without making the board elected, add some more requirements in terms of maybe requiring that the board have a librarian or have a attendance policy or have some more clarity about their meetings? Are those type of things, would those serve the objective?
It might help, but probably not in the long run. And I'm not sure I've served on boards where if you don't show up, you're not there anymore. So if you don't participate, you're gone. And in this case, looks like a lot of the members need to be gone. But no, we need to have people that are passionate about libraries and providing the funding and fighting for the funding to provide good services. We're crippling along. And as you can see, $30 per capita compared to Kearney's 57. You know, it's neglect.
This bill wouldn't give the library independent taxing authority. They'd still have to go, I think, to the city council and the mayor and ask for that money. I guess your position would be that because they're appointed by the mayor and the mayor can basically ask them to step off the board, they're not willing to step out of what the mayor wants and ask for more money.
I really don't know how it works to be appointed, but I know how it works to be elected. And so elected, I know how that works.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Next proponent testifier. Seeing none. Any opponent testimony? Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the General Affairs Committee. My name is Thomas Warren, ThomasWarren. I serve as Chief of Staff for Mayor Jean Stothard, City of Omaha. And I am testifying in opposition of LB 1256, which would change provisions related to public libraries. Specifically, it would require the election of library board members of a city of a metropolitan class, and in our case, the City of Omaha. The Omaha Public Library System is rather unique in that it is actually a City of Omaha department. However, it is governed by an independent 9-member Board of Trustees. The City of Omaha provides the funding for the Omaha Public Library System through our general operating budget. However, the library director is appointed by and reports to the Board of Trustees. The current 2022 operating budget for the Omaha Public Library and its 12 branches is $17.12 million. It has an authorized staff of 100 personnel, and they are all City of Omaha employees. Current Nebraska state law requires that the City of Omaha have a library board. State Statute 51-202 leaves it up to the city to determine by ordinance the process for its membership. Current statute allows the City of Omaha to decide by code whether to elect or appoint its members. The municipal code, section 14-23, states that the mayor is responsible for making appointments to the Board of Trustees, and these appointments are subject to the approval of the Omaha City Council. Converting the Omaha Public Library Board to an elected board would undermine the authority of the mayor and politicize these voluntary appointments. The Omaha Public Library system will evolve over the next few years with the relocation of the main branch and the construction of a new state-of-the-art facility with the support of our donor and philanthropic community. These projects are made possible because of the leadership and the influence of Mayor Stothard and the autonomy of the Board of Trustees. I feel that creating an elected board will cause an undue burden on the system, which could lead to inefficiencies in the administration of the programs and the delivery of the services. It is for these reasons that I oppose this proposed legislation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman Reese. Thank you for being here, Chief. Good to see you.
Likewise.
First question, of course, favorite thing about the library?
Resources and accessibility. The fact is that our public libraries are open to the public and the services are free of charge.
Thank you. So, I mean, I know you've been sitting here and you've heard everybody talk before you. Do you think that the process that is kind of the impetus for this bill, went perfectly?
It was entirely transparent. As you know, the public library board meetings are subject to open meetings law. There's public notice, there's public testimony, and so the appointments are also subject to a public hearing where the mayor simply nominates and makes recommendations for those board appointments, and they are subject to the approval of the Omaha City Council.
So after the way this process has gone down with the move of the library and obviously the hurt feelings and the comments and things, not just here, but at other places, is the mayor looking at any changes to how the library board is run, how it's appointed, looking to appoint any people from other parts of the city? Are there any tasks, any affirmative steps being taken to change the process?
Well, I can certainly tell you that we feel we have a very diverse board, and it's representative in terms of race, gender, ethnicity, as well as the board appointments are 3-year appointments. And so every 3 years, we cycle in and out 3 new board members every year, 3 consecutive years. And so there is turnover with respect to board attendance and board engagement. We would love to see that improve. I I cannot verify nor dispute what was suggested earlier in terms of the attendance or the level of engagement of our current board. However, certainly we want to make sure that those who are appointed actually attend the meetings and function.
So as to that last meeting where the board voted for and one abstained, I don't know what that vote was on specifically, but I guess as a general question, who owns the land the libraries sit on?
It is City of Omaha property.
Okay, so, and then the city council voted, as Mr. Sorry, was it Schroeder said? That vote was on the lease of the new place, the operator, and the lease on the other new place. The city council didn't actually vote on whether or not to sell or dispose of the downtown library property. Is that right?
Well, let me, if I can clarify.
Yeah, no,
There
I don't know the
there are a number of votes with respect to the public library system. One was relative to the owner's representation with regards to the relocation of our main branch of the public library. And there were two lease agreements. One to relocate the downtown branch to 1401 Jones, as well as to relocate our administrative functions and genealogy archives to 84th West Center. So there are two votes to relocate property, one vote for an owner's representative. And then subsequently, there was a decision made with respect to Mutual Omaha and the announcement. Of course, that is subject to demolition as well as the actual execution of the transaction for Mutual Omaha to ultimately relocate its headquarters to what is currently the site of the W. Dale Clark Library.
That decision was made subsequent to the vote?
That decision was made, well, it's only been proposed.
Okay.
It's only been proposed.
So the city council will have to vote on that ultimate disposition of that property.
Well, for all intents and purposes, we are going to demolish the W. Dale Clark Library. The subsequent decision will be Mutual Omaha locating its headquarters building at that site.
Okay. So what I'm trying to understand is, I watched the city council meeting and they talked about this, and it became clear that a number of people voted the way they voted, or because they felt if they didn't agree to the lease for the downtown library, there was just going to be no downtown library.
Well,
and so is that not accurate?
I would first suggest to you that since 2010, as well as the city's master plan of 2017 proposed ultimately demolishing the W. Dale Clark Library and relocating that facility. So since 2010, it's been in the city's master plan. There's been public discussions regarding the disposition of the W. Dale Clark Library, as well as in 2017. So this isn't anything new with regards to the city's intent. Our library system is built on neighborhood branches. And so in terms of the services that will still be provided ultimately at the relocated downtown branch will be those services of distribution, if you will. And so we won't lose that capability downtown. And then,
well, I guess that I'm not here to argue with you about whether I think this is the right decision or not. I have my opinion, and you and other people and other folks here have their opinion. The question is whether the procedure that's undertaken to make these decisions is one that the legislature should change. And so I'm trying to understand what the procedure is currently. So my understanding of the procedure, and I guess you're telling me that my understanding is incorrect, but the city council was told that they had to vote on a new lease because the library was going to be demolished downtown, that there would no longer be a downtown library. I'm trying to find out who got to decide that the downtown library is being demolished, if not the city council. Was it the library board? Was it the mayor unilaterally? So that's the question.
Okay. I can suggest that under no circumstances can we dictate or tell the city council to do anything. Okay, they are duly elected. They vote independently. With respect to what has been proposed, there was proposal to first enter into agreement for an owner's representative to relocate the downtown branch of the library, and then 2 separate lease agreements. It was proposed. We had public hearings. We received a significant amount of public input. The library board of trustees, those who were present, voted unanimously to support the owner's rep and the lease agreements, and by memorandum agreed to relocate the main branch of the downtown library. That was subsequently presented to the Omaha City Council in the form of an ordinance. They voted on the ordinance to approve the owner's representative as well as the relocation of the downtown branch, as well as moving the archives and administrative offices to 84th and roughly West 7th.
And what would have happened if they voted no?
I can't speculate in terms of what may have happened if they would have voted no. It was our intent, as it has been planned since 2010 and ultimately reinforced in 2017, that in our master plan to demolish W. Dale Clark, obviously it's a prime site for redevelopment. There's been $300 million of investment with regards to what was formerly Gene Leahy Mall or Central Park Mall along the riverfront, another $100 million. And so those locations were primed for redevelopment.
And again, I'm not arguing with the ultimate disposition or what the project is. I'm just trying to understand the process to determine whether or not we should make a change in the process. Metro Transit is a similar entity to the public library. Is that about right?
It's a quasi-public entity.
It's a department under the city that's
No.
No? It has taxing authority,
Correct.
which is different than the library. Does the Metro own its own property?
To my knowledge, it owns its headquarters building and the buses, but if you're talking about geography, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the distinction with who gets to decide what to do if we were to buy new library land that would belong to the city?
The city owns the property. That is correct.
And then when we tear down or move a library and sell that property, then that money goes back to the city, not to the library.
It's a unique situation in that the city owns the property. The city funds library operations. However, it is governed by an independent board of trustees.
And by governed by an independent board of trustees, the board of trustees are the ones who make the decision about whether or not to tear down or move a library.
They make decisions regarding operations. I'm not sure that they can agree to sell or not sell city property because it is owned by the city of Omaha.
Subject to the approval of the city council,
That's
which is what we saw in that situation. You said that we have an accurate, diverse board. Do you know if the board is currently broken down by city council in the way that this bill would propose, or?
It is not by geographic areas or addresses, no.
Not purposefully, but do you know where
I do
folks
not
live?
know their exact addresses, so I can't really answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy. Thank you, Chief, for testifying today. What is the cost to move all these libraries?
So there's cost of acquisition as well as there's cost to relocate. Now we're entering into actual lease purchase agreements on the 2 facilities. And so we're not actually acquiring the facilities. And so it is pretty complicated in terms of what is the cost of the renovation of the site, which is the site for the 1401 Jones, which would be the downtown branch. The cost of being shared by the city as well as the current owner. We're entering into roughly a 10-year lease with a 5-year option. And so the terms are defined. So we're not really purchasing, but we're leasing for 5 years with an option to buy at 10 years.
But there's a cost to pick the books up, move the bookshelves, move the books.
I can't give you the exact dollar amount.
Okay. Did you guys look at rebuilding downtown? I mean, if we're going to level a library and we're going to build I've been told, a $300 million skyscraper, is there TIF funds involved with this?
No, that's like three different questions, so I'll ask you. Okay.
Sometimes they go pretty fast. Go ahead.
Right. So with respect to the library, the TIF involvement is with regards to Mutual of Omaha constructing their headquarters building. And the cost estimate that you just described may be a little off. Okay, so that nonetheless, again, it's two different issues, I guess, is the point. And so if you could restate your question, okay.
Did the city of Omaha look at constructing
Good.
a
Okay,
new library, given the situation that the old one got torn down on this prime real estate spot and the incentives involved with that? I would think there'd be a benefit to the city to use funds to explore the construction of a new library. I guess,
So,
did
okay,
that
so
happen?
back to your question, with regard to the downtown library, there were some criteria established, namely, we needed 30,000 square feet to relocate the downtown branch of the library. We have limited options with regards to a facility that would meet the criteria downtown in proximity to what was formerly W. Dale Clark. With respect to constructing a new library, you're talking 3 to 5 years, as well as the costs associated with construction versus moving into an existing facility. And the location that we chose met the criteria for the 30,000 square feet, as well as it's an historic building. And we feel that it can be renovated and rehabilitated to meet the needs, as well as provide the quality services that we expect with our downtown, with our library facilities. So I guess the short answer is it would have taken much more time to build a facility. At the same time, we had little or no options with regards to having the space in the downtown quarter that would have been accessible to the patrons that would have formerly utilized the W. Dale Clark.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brandt. Anyone else?
I always think of more questions. Sorry. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In that master plan you talked about, did it specifically say the library had to move, or we just needed a new downtown library? Did it say
Both, and that it was outdated, it was inefficient, and obviously it was located in an area that was prime for redevelopment.
I'm sorry, the library's master plan took into consideration other uses of this place the library is?
Yes.
Okay. Who decides what criteria goes into the master plan?
There's a committee. We have input from our department heads as well as leadership. And these discussions and decisions are made on an annual basis as those master plans are updated.
Okay, so the master plan for the library does not necessarily take into consideration what's the best use of the library.
There are some operational considerations as well as that of the physical space with regards to upkeep and maintenance and whether or not it's cost prohibitive or cost beneficial.
Right, that's a question of whether a new building is necessary or not whether or not that location could be used for a prime for development.
It's a combination, both.
Okay. As to the new location that you were just talking about with Senator Brandt, how does it compare in terms of accessibility?
It's 4 blocks from the W. Dale Clark.
Okay, and the W. Dale Clark is on the orbit line right now, right?
That's correct.
And I recall one of the, I guess, features of the orbit was its connection to things like the main downtown library. What bus lines is the new location on?
So the orbit is a east-west transit line, and there are arteries north and south. And so there are probably 4 bus lines that will run within a block of the 1401 Jones site. And so it is definitely accessible as well as Metro Rail Transit has been in conversations about additional routes to increase accessibility via bus line.
So they're considering changing the bus routes to accommodate the move in the library.
That's correct.
Okay. And I guess the fact that the prime for development line, I guess, really is a shocking one to me. So my question then is, what happens to if we are successful as a city and every other location the libraries are? The A.V. Sorensen Library is right in the middle of a bunch of, Dundee, and there's apartments going up on the east side of Dundee and apartments going up in the middle of Dundee. If that property then becomes of interest to an apartment developer, do we get rid of the A.V. Sorensen Library because it becomes prime for development?
That question is fueled by speculation, Senator. I cannot
Clearly,
I cannot, even respectfully, I can't.
No, I appreciate that response. I apologize for asking that question, but I'm just caught off guard by that statement. But I know that the other thing that I haven't gotten to, and I apologize for talking to you for so long, but I appreciate you being here. And this is a conversation I think of great import to my constituents in the city of Omaha in particular. You mentioned the autonomy of the board, and we heard some testimony that kind of contradicted that. Do you have a rebuttal to the fact that individuals are concerned about the autonomy of an appointed board?
We feel very confident that those who are appointed to the board are mature professionals that engage in a level of thoughtful deliberation as they will make their decisions. These are individuals that are properly vetted. They typically will have a professional background and interest and demonstrated passion for the library. And so, yes, we are confident that they operate independently without any undue influence or pressure from the executive branch.
Are you familiar with the story that Ms. Wheeler referenced of Mr. Meyer from, I know it predates your term of service here, but are you familiar with that situation?
No, I'm
not. Okay. And you referenced that something, I wrote it down, I can't remember where I wrote it, but that it undermined the authority of the mayor. Is the primary consideration of how we run the city to maintain the authority of the mayor, or is it to have an effective open government that reflects the interests of the people?
Well, both. I would suggest to you that obviously we have a strong mayor form of government. Our mayor was duly elected, and in this most recent instance, overwhelmingly 2-1. And so she does represent the interest of our citizens and is responsive to the needs and the interests of our citizens. And of course, we are open to receiving input. We do believe in healthy discourse. It's not a dictatorship. It's a very democratic process. And so along with that, the support that we receive from the Omaha City Council is how we arrive at decisions in city government. Much like here in the legislature. You have a governor. He makes appointments to boards and commissions. It's very similar to that of the mayor, who appoints to over 60 boards and commissions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Anyone else? These trustees, they're appointed by the mayor, and that appointment is approved by a majority vote of the Omaha City Council, correct?
That's correct.
Do you recall in the past, is that vote of the city council typically unanimous?
It is not typically, and we've had rather heated deliberations over board appointments. And if you're referring to the library board specifically.
Yes, library board
specifically. And mind you, there's only been one appointment since I've been back in city government, and I believe that was a 6-1 vote.
6-1. And prior to that, you'd have real knowledge of.
That's correct.
Because this is a 7-member city council elected by districts, correct?
Correct.
That approved these appointments.
Yes.
Okay. Fiscal note, City of Omaha, I don't think provided information on the cost of doing what's being proposed here. But you don't have a ballpark number of what this process? You mentioned potential inefficiencies earlier. Any idea of a dollar amount or how to quantify those potential inefficiencies?
No, but obviously, you know, you'd have candidates that would have to run for elected office. There would have to be an election. These candidates would have to campaign. There could be some costs associated with administering the process with regards to the election if this legislation was passed.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. Any other opposition testimony? Any neutral testifiers? Seeing none, Senator McKinney, would you like to close?
Thank you, and thank you to everyone that came to testify today. One thing that stuck out to me and kind of hit home for me for the reason, well, there's a couple of things that hit home, but I was like, you know what, the more I listened to this hearing, the more I definitely think LB 1256 was needed and the changes to the library board is needed. But one of the testifiers, I think it was Ms. Snipes, she said the libraries are more than just books. And I think Senator Kavanaugh highlighted some of the resources that are available that aren't just books. You know, listen here, I was like, you know, all these questions, if it was a simple process, if it was a transparent process, and it wasn't so confusing, then I could understand the argument to why the mayor should continue to appoint the library board. But from the nature of the conversation and, you know, the public dialogue and what has occurred throughout from the time I heard about this until they officially started making these decisions, there's a lack of transparency in how the process is taking place in the city of Omaha. You know, many people, including my staff, you know, use library for faxing and copying and using computers to apply for college. A lot of individuals, I know me and members of my staff, we use a library to prepare for college and didn't get a laptop until we went to college. I know now OPS is providing students with more access to laptops and things like that, but it was a time where that wasn't true. And even so, when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of kids that ended up out in the streets because they didn't have access to the library. So it's important for many reasons. I think transportation is possibly going to be an issue. I know we're saying that, you know, there are lines that'll intersect with the Orbit line, and Metro is trying to work on a way to work this out once the move is official. But just saying, oh, it's just a block or so away doesn't mean that it increased or did decrease accessibility. I don't think this would undermine the authority of the mayor or her leadership. I just think it would more so lend a voice for the people of Omaha. Having an elected board shouldn't undermine your authority. I think the mayor should work in collaboration with an elected board, just as she should work in collaboration with an appointed board. And there should be a clear line of, we make decisions over here, you make suggestions. You know, it shouldn't be, if this undermines her authority, that means there's a need for an elected board, in my opinion. I don't think it's an undue burden. We could figure it out. And Senator Kavanaugh, when I heard Prime for Development, that hit home. Are we prioritizing development over the needs of the people? We really have to think about that. Just because something is prime land for development doesn't mean we just tear down a library to do so. You know, no matter where that library is located. I know they are investing millions of dollars in downtown Omaha in hopes to attract more people, but that doesn't mean you don't think about people first. You know, developers are developers and they're just trying to make a dollar. But some people that the only way to a dollar is to use a library to fill out a job application. We have to think about those in need and those that don't have access, not the ones with $1 million ideas and developments. And I'll end it with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for the senator? Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator McKay, for bringing this bill. It's been a really interesting discussion. I don't think I asked you your favorite thing about the library.
My favorite thing about the library, for me as a kid growing up, it was to be able to get on the computers. That was my favorite thing, to go to the library and get on computers. I did read books sometimes, but being able to go to the library and get on computers, especially when I spent time at my grandparents' house, because they lived, when I was a kid, they lived probably a block or two away from the Washington branch.
Well, they didn't have computers in the library when I was a kid. I'm not that old, but I'm old enough that they didn't have computers in the library when I was a kid. The thing you said, you didn't think it undermines the mayor's authority, and I don't disagree or agree with that. And I kind of, I said to Chief Warren that I'm not here to try and litigate whether or not this is the right decision or not. The question for me is whether or not the process works for this decision and will work for other decisions in the future. And it's possible. I read a book from the library this year, believe it or not. I got a library book about decision making. And one of the things it said is, if you have a bad process but get to a right answer, that's luck. But if you have a good process, that will get you to a right answer every time. So whether this is the right answer or not, is this the right process? That's the question, right?
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think the thing to think about is when it's clear to me that the city is prioritizing development over the concerns of the public, to me, that's the line you draw in the sand and say, no, that's not acceptable. The process isn't right. Because like you kind of pointed out, if somebody says like, oh, the location where A.B. Sorensen is prime for development. We can make millions of dollars off this. We could build condos, and somebody presents the idea to the mayor or the council. Will they just get rid of that library too? Or if development begins in North Omaha and somebody says, let's tear down the Washington branch because we could build apartment complexes or something like that, do we just do that? And then the people, I would probably assume, will feel like the process wasn't transparent again, and there's nobody that can answer because the vote, it was what, 4-1 or one I abstained, and it's a 9-member board, right? So 4 people decided the fate of the library system in a sense, not completely, but
Yeah, and so that kind of to that point, and I asked Chief Warren this about whether or not this process went perfectly and whether the mayor is entertaining any changes. I know you proposed this as a change. Are there other changes you would entertain that would make the board operate better, would service this objective?
I would say a ballot initiative on the city level to see whether to elect or appoint as well. So the people of Omaha, you do have the option to do a ballot initiative to make these changes as well.
That'd be
Or get the mayor or the city council to propose. I don't know how the ordinance process works, but to have somebody on the council put forward an ordinance to make that change as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Anyone else? Senator
Did anybody ever bring up the obvious, put the library in the skyscraper?
No.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, sort of.
Not if you built the skyscraper.
Well, I guess that's it. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Seeing no other questions, thank you.
No
Senator
problem.
McKinney,
Thank
for
you.
bringing this. And we had 17 letters in support of LB 1266 and 3 letters in opposition. No new. That closes the hearing on LB 1256. And that will close the general affairs hearing for today. Thank you, everyone.